Welcome to Training Transformers, the podcast where we explore innovative approaches to learning and training in today's rapidly changing workplace. I'm your host, Tejas, and in each episode, we bring you conversations with thought leaders who are revolutionizing how organizations approach their training and people development. Today, I'm thrilled to welcome Caner Akova, an experienced L&D professional from Olympus EMEA who specializes in bridging the stakeholder gap in learning and development. Now, Janer implements influencing strategies to transform stakeholder chaos into some L&D success. His expertise lies in connecting business needs with how people think, work, and grow. So thank you so much, Janer, for joining us on this Training Transformers podcast today.
Thank you, Tejas. The pleasure is mine.
Yeah, fantastic to have you here. So before we dive into this, fascinating world of stakeholder management in L&D and training, I'd love for our listeners first to know more about you. Could you share a little bit about your background and your journey in learning and development so far?
Right, sure. I studied in Turkey and I studied American studies. Then I also did my master's in American studies and cultural studies. And from there, the first stop for me, first career stop for me was going to be academia. That didn't work out, so I just said, you know what? I mean, another thing that I could do is to teach. And I started teaching language at a language school. And after that, it kind of, transformed from a language school to university level. From university level, I went to Canada, and at the University of Toronto, I also started teaching there. And from there, um, I got a very random offer because I was really interested in making things a little bit, different. And how do we put technology to good use, and how do we support ourselves with technology? And our director said, you know what, there's something happening at the School of Continuing Studies uh, like related to blended learning. Would you be interested? And I said, sure. And I thought it was going to be a, natural transition because, I'm teaching and people are learning, so learning experience should be very similar. Apparently, it was not. I was I was actually shocked to see that they are actually not related in the sense that I expected. So from there, I was like, okay, so we came to the point of no return now. I I took this job now, as might as well go with the flow and just understand and do my best in it. And that's how I started in this journey. And from there, I came a long way because I know that it's not about learning theory anymore or how adults learn. It's more about how do we make problems go away, and how do we use people's capability, people's capacity, and other solutions to make that happen.
Wow, that's interesting because
Yeah.
I think most of the guests that we get on this podcast, they have also come from academia, and most of them fall into L&D and training, and then they just carry on from there. So I'm just curious, like, did any of your teaching experiences before, did they, shape your current approach to how you do L&D?
Maybe I think the only thing I can say that on a theoretical and an academic level, for me, very subjectively, nothing helped me. The only thing that helped me was connecting with students and dealing with students,
Yeah,
and how I reach them, how I sell them an idea that they're going to need this, like what I'm giving them. And
yeah,
that kind of shaped how I approach stakeholders, right?
yeah,
So, because if you go the teacher route, it's like, I'm the most knowledgeable person here. You need what I'm going to give you, so you have to listen to me. If you try the same thing in business, that's not going to work out. So, yeah, and I've seen a lot of people, a lot of colleagues in L&D who also, came from teaching backgrounds, tried that, and they were like, they're not listening to me. Like, I know. And I'm like, yeah, but they also know you're not the smartest person in the room anymore. They know other things. You might know your stuff, but
yeah.
you have to make them feel like, they are there for a reason too. And after that, things started changing a little bit.
I mean, I think your experiences really highlight the importance of understanding both the business and the people side of learning
Mm,
and development. And
yeah.
I think this brings me to something many of our listeners struggle with here, and that is what are the most common pitfalls that cause learning initiatives to fail, and what strategic approaches have you used so far in order to increase that buy-in and actual bring out actual behavioral change in your in the people that you are creating your L&D programs for.
That's a loaded question. And I know there are like a lot of people, very, very valuable L&D people on LinkedIn that are talking about this too. So I'm just going to try to keep it a little bit short because there are brilliant people who are far more brilliant than me and who have done this a very long time too. And I think the first thing is that L&D, as L&D people, we tend to play the teacher, like we are the sage, right? We're the wise person that, and everybody should benefit from our knowledge. But also the people from the business, they also know a lot of stuff too, right? And the key is in their hands.
Yeah.
Because in a school setting, in an academia setting, the students have to be there, right? They need your grades, they need the attendance, so they're kind of, forced to be there. But in business, learning doesn't work that way, right? Or training or whatever you want to call it. Like the L&D initiatives, they're not like that because they have other stuff. Like salespeople need to sell to keep their jobs, and it's not about 100% development for them. So the survival is not sitting in the classroom or
Yeah.
listening to the wise guy, but it's more about selling stuff. Or when it's about customer support, it's about customer support, right? So
Yeah.
let's take kind of a back seat when it comes to that.
Mm.
So I think the common pitfall is, as L&D, sometimes we forget about this and we want to be taken seriously because we know everything, and sometimes it doesn't happen that way. And the other thing is, since we haven't done a very good job of telling the businesses that we are capable of not only providing training, but other things too.
Mm.
Since we haven't done a very good job, the businesses are, oh, there's a little bit of a performance issue here. We need to do training.
Yeah.
And again, we're coming back to our kind of failed attempt to tell them what we can do. They say we need training, and we're like, oh, wait, maybe we can do something else. Maybe we can do some sort of another intervention to make this better. But since we sucked in the beginning to make a good story about this, they're like, no, 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 we need training. And this goes back and forth a little bit until the L&D person is like, oh, you know what? Fine, let's do the training. Because there's
Yeah.
not this, this we're not jiving with the business most
Yeah.
of the time because we actually don't take the time to invest in these relationships. And I think the the biggest solution to this would be, I think, relationship management. So we need to understand what keeps them awake at night, right? So what are they scared of losing, right? And how could we put these in terms that they would understand? Do we talk about benefits? Oh, if we do this initiative, I don't know, we're gonna increase turnover. Sorry, we're gonna decrease turnover like by 10%. Or is it more about, okay, we have turnover and this is costing us this much money? And if
Mhm.
we want to not lose that money, we have to act fast, right? So who are we talking to, right? Are these financial people who care about money, so that the loss of money and that financial thing is important to them? If that's important to them, then yeah, then we should talk in those terms. So I think those are the most common pitfalls, and most of the time businesses think it's a capability issue, right?
Yeah.
Employees are not doing what they're told to or their jobs correctly because they can't, but there are a lot of other factors. And as L&D, when we accept that and when we don't fight for that, and that is also understandable, right? Sometimes we just don't have the mental headspace to tell everyone the same thing. It's not a training issue. Training won't fix that, but you can only say that so many times. And after a while, you're like, oh, you know what, fine. I'll just do the training because I can't get through, right? And then it becomes a vicious cycle because now the business is like, oh, we asked for training, they did the training, it should be fine now. So
Hmm.
I think that that is the most common pitfall. And what we can do is just maybe, the order taker is an important term right now in L&D. What we can do is, and I also read that somewhere, just maybe take the order, but do something 5, 10, 15%,
Hmm.
as much as you can get away with,
Yeah.
differently in your own way that you think it's gonna be useful and helpful. And when
Yeah.
they realize that, next time you can do 25% or 30%, and you can actually say, hey, I did this part on my terms. Now we can see it worked. And now next time they will be like, oh, you know what? That's not such a bad idea. And you'll get more. It's a long game.
Yeah.
It's a long game, and we have to play the long game for a while because that's how everything works now.
So, I mean, these pitfalls that you mentioned relate closely to either relationship challenges or like communication challenges between L&D and other business units.
Mm.
So, I mean, let's explore that further. Like, how do you recommend that L&D teams actually show some tangible value of their training programs to this business stakeholders? How do they go about that?
That is also very difficult, right? So data is an important topic here.
Yeah.
Right. And as L&D, most of the time we don't have, like, we are not granted those licenses of the CRMs so that we can measure that impact. But how can we do it? I actually also did it, that we help people who are in charge of these dashboards, right?
Yeah.
And we help them in other situations, and we build that relationship so that we still have access to those things, or also pull these business people into that, right? So we're going to have an initiative, right? A performance improvement initiative or a training program, doesn't matter. So if we have a good enough relationship with that person, we can just say, you know what, I really would like to see if this program is going to make a difference. So can we look at the KPIs that you are interested in before everything starts, and maybe we can take a look at them together. And if you have a good enough relationship, if you cultivated that relationship, you might have access to data. And does data tell the whole story? Of course not, right? That's just interpretation. There are confounding factors. If it's, related to sales or something else, the market is different because of some other reason. The capital market, something happens in the capital market and everybody stops buying for some reason. It's not because your salespeople are terrible or they're not able to do it. There are a lot of reasons, but data can tell you something.
Yeah.
And what can you do? You can also put that data together with maybe surveys, right?
Mhm.
But talk to real people, not just like, send them something like 100 people and just fill this in and get back to me, but just, I don't know, do interviews. That's why I'm telling, this is relationship management, right? So get access to that so that you can actually get that data and talk to people. And after that, you might have something in your hand that you can attribute to impact.
Yeah, I mean,
That,
this is such a common challenge right now, right? For
yeah.
L&D folks is like,
Mhm.
how do I show a tangible value for whatever we are doing right now? It could be showcasing the ROI of your training programs to your stakeholders and actually showing we did these many hours of these programs, these training programs, and because of which the productivity of this employee went up or something like that. It's either increasing productivity or are you saving money for the company or you're making money for the company. So I guess but I mean, calculating the ROI of your programs
Yeah.
generally depends on these things, right?
That is one way you can show impact, and but it also depends, right? If you're talking to financial people like CFOs or whatever, it's mostly money. But if it's I don't know, HR, then it's mostly about not money but retention, right?
Attention.
Do we
Yeah.
have turnover? Do we have good retention? Do we have high turnover? So this term that you're speaking in should also be adjusted and adapted towards the people that you're talking, right? So the HR people might not be interested in the amount of money that we're losing or making, but they might be more interested in high retention, low turnover. And again, this is also part of the pitfalls, right? So if we keep talking about, oh, learning theory, and this is how adults learn and learning transfer to a person who looks at numbers in the financial department, he's going to be like, dude, I don't care about the learning transfer or the uh, how adults learn and stuff like that. I just need to understand why are we losing this much money, right? So that's also adjusting and adapting your strategy and your approach.
So I'm just curious, like, have you ever encountered like a very particularly resistant stakeholder who, and what approach did you find most effective in order to navigate that?
I actually did, but I'm going to put them in a group. Like I have had many stakeholders that I work with, so I'm going to put them, I think, in a group and just recount the experience as a general um, thing. But what I actually realized was it was not the stakeholders that are being difficult. The situation was difficult because I was playing the teacher. I actually didn't take the time to understand where they were coming from. So they were resistant to things that I told them. I told them, you know what? So you want continuous learning? Fine. Let's do an adaptive platform in which people can go in and based on their logins, the content could be recycled for them. And I started talking about this, and they were like, wait, this sounds like, AI. And back then it was like, I don't know, 5, 6 years ago. And they were like, oh, this sounds expensive. We're not going to just stop talking. And I was mad because I was like, this is the future. But they didn't care about the future back then. They cared about, okay, we have an issue probably with the capability of our people, and we would like to instill a culture of continuous learning. So I didn't actually dive deeper, right? I just had an incredible idea, and I needed to get my idea through, and then I would be featured in the company's newsletter, like the genius who solved the problem and stuff like that, right? So because that was the approach that I laid out for them. But apparently, what they wanted was, I am scared about this. I
Mhm.
am scared that in 5 years, our people will not be ready for the future and we're going to fall back in the competition. I didn't understand that back then, and I didn't take the time to understand that.
Yeah.
So back then, for me, they were like, these resistant people who didn't understand the future and innovation. No, I was the person who actually didn't understand them. It wasn't about learning needs or whatever, it was about understanding them as people. And so it was a difficult or a resistant stakeholder, but I think it was a difficult know-it-all L&D professional in me that kind of made the situation difficult.
Okay. Well, you talked about the future of technologies back then, but we are actually living right now in the era of AI and
Yeah.
skill disruption. So, how do you think L&D departments should move beyond now traditional training models to create more dynamic learning experiences for their workers? That is going to drive organizational performance. Do you use any AI technologies for that? Have you used them before? What are they?
Currently, as a company at Olympus, we are exploring these opportunities.
Yeah.
Um, but I have kind of a fear about this, which is the same thing that's going to happen with SCORM, right? When SCORM came out, it was incredible because we didn't need to cut papers and just create something interesting and colorful, right? So it
Yeah.
was interactive and we could do it. And after that, it was so overused to the point of training being equated to click, 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 next, 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 and then yeah, you have your certificate, you're trained in this, right? So we assume that it's trained. So I think companies will also kind of go along the same way with the Gen AI products, that they're gonna put some sort of knowledge in the company and let AI crank out content. And they will say, yeah, you know what, we have the training, we created the training, people should do this, and then we're fine. So that's my fear, right? But there's a lot of other stuff that there are other people on LinkedIn too who are more qualified than I am to say these things. But what kind of makes me excited is how we can actually really help people in the context of what they're doing using artificial intelligence, right?
Mhm.
For example, Viva is coming up with people skills right now. It's
Okay.
been I think it's out for some time, and I kind of checked it out, and it's really interesting that we can have we have the opportunity to get help in the exact time of what we're doing stuff. This is what Copilot is aiming to do, like
Yeah.
perfectly, right? So even like when you're doing LinkedIn Learning, it wasn't an option back then, but now you can see that what are the key takeaways in this video? Can you make
Yeah.
it easier for me, right? So this is this is helping us so much right now
Mhm.
while we are doing something, because I think the time for, oh, I have to go listen to something, learn something, then apply it, and then transfer it. And now I can say that I know this. No, we need right at that time, right? I need to know what this is. I click on it. I know this contextual help, and then we're done. We'll move away, right? So I think AI is going to go into overdrive mode for people for this if this is used really well, and people will kind of full throttle their improvement on this because they would be doing things more efficiently. And I think that would be a good use.
Yeah. Do you also think that it will be more on the side of content being used by L&D teams with the help
Yeah.
of AI tools in order to create the programs, or is it going to be in assessments or any other categories that you think?
I sincerely hope that we kind of do away with, especially in schools too, that we do away with measuring memory when
Uh-huh.
it comes to learning, like, quizzes, questions. But what we can do is, I don't know, if you have a bricklayer, you don't ask them how they lay bricks, right? You just show me.
Yeah.
And then if they're doing something wrong, you're like, no, like this. So I think AI is very important here, that we can actually create role-playing scenarios for sales teams, for customer support. I actually created a custom GPT called Not Your Average Stakeholder for L&D teams. In this one, I kind of, put in a simulated stakeholder. They can
Uh,
actually give some prompts in the beginning to make the interaction hard or easy, and
yeah.
then they are rated. And I also published this in my latest the L&D horseradish detector. So if anyone is listening to this, please type not your average stakeholder on ChatGPT's custom GPTs and see how it works for you. I would love
Sure.
to have some feedback. And it's really interesting because now I can actually role play how to approach stakeholders. And this could be done for sales, this could be done for customer support. And
Yeah.
I think that's an incredible way to use it. But I also fear that it's going to be more about content.
Yeah.
And excuse me, automatically generated content, and people will assume that, oh, you know what, we created the content, that's enough training, people should do it, and it's fine. I
Yeah.
fear that it's going to happen, but I also hope that the other side, like, contextual, on the job help and role plays to see if people are capable of what they learned or what they saw or what they practiced.
That's so cool though that you have created a custom GPT for, maybe the stakeholder can put challenging questions to you and, you can navigate them one by one. This will be very helpful for other L&D listeners who are over here. Definitely, for sure. That's very
Definitely.
interesting. They can probably create their own versions of custom GPTs as well.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. I mean, the possibilities are endless when you think of like when you think of what you can do with it, right?
Yeah.
It's just you just need to think, is this a valid way of measuring people's effectiveness? I think questions and exams, they are actually done. You can ChatGPT could write a paper for university students
Yes.
better than the hardest working student because it's it's already there. All the data is already there. I mean,
Yeah.
maybe we should rethink how we approach these things.
Fantastic, Janet. Your insights today have been incredibly valuable. Before we wrap up, I have one more question that we ask all our guests. And that's
Right.
what's one piece of advice or tip that you would share with L&D and training professionals who are listening to this podcast?
One piece of advice would be never forget the relationship because that's when things get personal and you start getting your way.
Never forget the relationships in terms
Yeah.
of stakeholders or, just generally with your employees and just keep
I
maintaining
mean, I
relationships.
mean, in my sense, I use it for the stakeholders that I work with because it makes my job a lot easier if I email with someone or if I go to lunch with them in the office. I know that the latter one solves a lot more than the email correspondence. But I think also if you're a people manager, if you're a people leader, that's also valid because you have to cultivate that relationship and you have to maintain that relationship so that it's more about the human side of things.
Fantastic. That's great advice to end on, Janet. Thank you so much for sharing your expertise and insights with the audience today. Your practical approaches to bridging the stakeholder gap and relationship management and creating this meaningful learning experiences are exactly what many L&D professionals right now struggle with. They need this right now. And to our listeners, if you enjoyed today's episode, please subscribe to Training Transformers on Apple Podcasts, Spotify. We're also on YouTube. And leave us your review. Your feedback helps us continue to bring such great conversations with thought leaders like Janer here, who are transforming the world of learning and development. So until next time, I'm Tejas, and this has been Training Transformers. Thank you so much.